The gun wasn't pointed at her, but it might as well have been. Janelle stood frozen in the private VIP room of the Lotus Club, her serving tray trembling in her hands as three men in expensive suits surrounded her fake boyfriend. Sai Wu, the man who'd offered her $5,000 to pretend to be his girlfriend for one weekend, moved with terrifying precision. One moment he was beside her. The next he had the armed man's wrist bent at an unnatural angle, the weapon clattering to the floor. "Anyone who threatens what's mine answers to me." Siwoo's voice was ice-wrapped in silk, his eyes darker than she'd ever seen them. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "And she is mine." The words sent an involuntary shiver down Janelle's spine. This wasn't part of their arrangement. This wasn't fake anymore. She'd known Siwoo was dangerous, known the wedding she'd agreed to attend was more than it seemed. But she hadn't known this. Hadn't known the way he'd look at her like she was worth killing for. Hadn't known that 3 days of pretending would make her heart forget it was all a lie. Janelle's feet were killing her. She'd been on them for 7 hours straight, weaving between tables at the Lotus Club with practiced efficiency, balancing trays of overpriced cocktails for clientele who barely noticed her existence. The Friday night crowd was particularly demanding. Businessmen celebrating deals, couples on expensive dates, groups of friends burning through trust fund money like it would never run out. She was invisible to them, just another black woman in a server's uniform, there to refill glasses and clear plates and smile politely no matter how they spoke to her. "Miss, we've been waiting 10 minutes for our drinks," a woman snapped, her diamond bracelet catching the low light as she gestured impatiently. "I apologize for the wait," Janelle said smoothly, setting down their order with the same professional grace she'd perfected over 3 years of service work. "Can I get you anything else?" The woman waved her off dismissively, already turning back to her companions. No thank you, no acknowledgement. Just the assumption that Janelle existed solely to serve. She was used to it. Had learned early in life that being a 6-foot-tall black woman with dark brown skin and natural coils meant she was either invisible or hypervisible, depending on the room. Here at the Lotus Club, Manhattan's most exclusive Korean-owned establishment, she was definitely the former. Janelle moved toward the bar, mentally calculating her tips for the night. If she was lucky, she'd clear $300. Between this job and her morning shift at the diner in Harlem, she might actually make rent this month, might even have enough left over to fix the leak in her bathroom that her landlord kept forgetting to address. Janelle. Marcus, the floor manager, appeared at her elbow with his tablet. "VIP room 7 needs service, high priority client." Her stomach sank. VIP rooms meant bigger tips, but also more demanding clients. And high priority was code for someone important who will make your life hell if anything goes wrong. "Can't someone else?" "He asked for you specifically." Marcus's expression was unreadable. "Said he saw you working the floor earlier, wants only you for the evening." A cold finger of unease traced down Janelle's spine. In her experience, when wealthy men asked for specific servers, it rarely ended well. "Marcus, I don't do private—" "It's not like that." He lowered his voice. "This is Siwoo Kang, owner's nephew, Korean Mafia. Though we don't call it that to his face, he's particular, but professional. Just keep his glass full and don't ask questions. Korean Mafia. Jesus." Janelle had heard whispers about the Lotus Club's true ownership, about the legitimate business empire that fronted for something much darker. She'd deliberately never asked questions, never looked too closely at the men in expensive suits who occupied the VIP floors, and spoke in low voices about shipments and territory. She needed this job too badly to be curious. "Fine," she said, straightening her shoulders. "What's he drinking?" "He'll tell you himself." The VIP room was on the 7th floor, accessible only by a private elevator that required a special key card. The hallway was quiet, insulated from the club noise below, decorated in sleek modern minimalism that screamed money. Janelle paused outside the door marked 7, took a steadying breath, and knocked. "Come in." The voice was deep, accented, and commanded immediate obedience. Janelle entered and immediately understood why Marcus had called this man particular. Siwoo Kang sat alone at a table positioned to overlook the floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Manhattan's glittering skyline. He was perhaps 35, devastatingly handsome in the way that made her throat go dry. Sharp jawline, intense dark eyes, black hair styled with casual perfection. He wore a crisp white dress shirt with the top 4 buttons undone, revealing a muscular chest and the edge of what looked like a tattoo on his neck. Everything about him radiated controlled power, danger wrapped in expensive cologne and tailored clothing. "You're Janelle." It wasn't a question. "Yes, sir. I'll be taking care of you this evening." She kept her voice professional, her expression neutral. "What can I get you to drink?" "Sit down." Excuse me?" "Sit." He gestured to the chair across from him. "I want to talk to you." Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to make an excuse and leave. But this man was clearly someone important, someone who could get her fired with a single word. Slowly, carefully, Janelle sat. Siwoo studied her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. His gaze traveled over her face, her natural hair pulled back in a low bun, the curve of her neck before returning to meet her eyes. It wasn't lecherous, it was assessing, like he was evaluating whether she met some specific criteria. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. 3 years. "And before that?" "Various service positions." "Sir, if this is about my performance, I need a girlfriend for the weekend." The statement was delivered with the same casual authority as ordering a drink. "I'll pay you $5,000. Janelle blinked, then blinked again. "I'm sorry, what?" "My sister is getting married Sunday. My family has been pressuring me to settle down. Stop being so focused on business. If I show up alone again, I'll spend the entire weekend dodging setups and lectures." He leaned back, his shirt pulling taut across his chest. "I need a date. Someone who can play the role convincingly. Someone who won't ask questions about my work or try to extend the arrangement beyond the agreed terms. You want to pay me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" Her voice came out flat with disbelief. "Yes. Sir, I'm a waitress, not an escort. I'm not propositioning you for sex." His tone held a hint of irritation. "I need someone to attend a wedding with me, smile at my relatives, and act affectionate for approximately 48 hours. That's all. You'd have your own hotel room. No physical expectations beyond what's necessary to sell the illusion. Hand-holding. Perhaps a chaste kiss or two if the situation demands it." Janelle's mind raced. $5,000. That was 3 months of rent. That was fixing her car that had been sitting in the shop for 2 weeks. That was breathing room she desperately needed. But this man was Korean Mafia. Getting involved with him, even in a fake capacity, seemed like a spectacularly bad idea. "Why me?" she asked carefully. Something flickered in his dark eyes. "You're beautiful, poised. You handle difficult people with grace. I watched you deal with that rude woman downstairs without breaking character. And most importantly, you clearly need the money badly enough to consider this offer, despite every intelligent instinct telling you to refuse." The accuracy of his assessment stung. "That's pretty presumptuous. Is it wrong?" "No. God, no, it wasn't wrong." Janelle was 3 weeks behind on her electric bill, surviving on ramen and coffee, picking up every shift she could find. $5,000 was a lifeline she couldn't afford to refuse, no matter how suspicious the offer. "What exactly would I have to do?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. Siwoo's expression softened slightly. "Attend the wedding rehearsal dinner Saturday evening. The ceremony and reception Sunday. Meet my family, play the role of girlfriend, answer some questions about our relationship. I'll brief you on everything you need to know. My driver will pick you up Saturday morning. We'll return Sunday night." "And that's it? No strings?" "No strings. You walk away with $5,000 cash and we never see each other again." He pulled out his phone, typed something, and showed her the screen. "This is half up front. The rest when we return Sunday night." Janelle stared at the Venmo screen showing a pending transfer of $2,500. Her hands were shaking. This was insane. Absolutely insane. "I need an answer," Siwoo said quietly. "I leave in the morning." She thought of her eviction notice, her broken car, the humiliation of asking her mother for money again, the weight of being 28 years old and barely keeping her head above water, while everyone around her seemed to have it figured out. "Okay," Janelle heard herself say. "I'll do it." Siwoo's lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it had reached his eyes. "Good. Give me your number. I'll send you the details." As she recited her phone number, watching him enter it into his contacts under Janelle Weekend, she wondered what the hell she'd just agreed to. But when her phone buzzed with the notification of $2,500 hitting her account, the fear dimmed just slightly. Maybe she could survive this. Maybe, for once in her life, she'd catch a break instead of having to claw for every scrap of stability. She had no idea that this weekend would change everything. Saturday morning arrived too quickly. Janelle stood outside her worn brownstone apartment building in Harlem, clutching a borrowed overnight bag and second-guessing every decision that had led to this moment. She'd barely slept, her mind spinning through increasingly catastrophic scenarios. What if Siwoo was lying about his intentions? What if she ended up dead in a ditch somewhere? What if this wedding was actually some kind of criminal operation? But then she'd checked her bank account, seen that $2,500, and remembered that she'd already paid her landlord with it. There was no backing out now. A sleek black Mercedes pulled up precisely at 9 a.m. The driver, a young Korean man with an earpiece and expressionless face, exited and opened the rear door without a word. Janelle slid into the leather interior and found Siwoo waiting, looking somehow even more intimidating in the morning light. He wore dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent, his hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. "Good morning," he said, his accent more pronounced than she remembered. "Did you eat breakfast?" "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." He produced a paper bag from a local bakery. "You'll need energy today. Eat." Janelle bristled at the command, but took the bag, finding a still warm croissant and fresh fruit inside. Her stomach betrayed her with a loud rumble. She'd been too nervous to eat earlier. As she bit into the buttery pastry, she caught Siwoo watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "We need to establish our story," he said as the car pulled into traffic. "How we met, how long we've been together, basic information about each other." "Okay." Janelle pulled out her phone to take notes. "Where did we meet?" "At the Lotus Club 3 months ago. You were my server. I asked you out that night. And I said yes to a customer? That seems unlikely." The corner of his mouth twitched. "You said no 3 times. I was persistent. Eventually you agreed to coffee. We've been seeing each other since. 3 months. Long enough to be serious, short enough to explain why his family hadn't met her yet. What do I do for work? Do I tell them I'm a waitress? You're a graduate student. Columbia University. Literature. You work part-time to supplement your stipend." Janelle's eyebrows rose. "That's oddly specific. And a lie. It's a better story than I hired your brother's girlfriend for the weekend." Siwoo's voice was dry. "My family is traditional. Status matters. A graduate student is respectable. A waitress they'd see as beneath me." The casual classism stung, even though Janelle knew he was probably right. She'd experienced enough judgment in her life to recognize how these things worked. "Fine. What should I know about you?" For the next hour, Siwoo briefed her with business-like efficiency. He was the oldest son of the Kang family, which ran a legitimate import-export business that was actually legitimate, mostly. His sister Jiwon was marrying into another prominent Korean-American family. The wedding would have approximately 200 guests, mostly family and business associates. His mother was traditional and particular. His father was complicated. "Complicated how?" Janelle asked. Siwoo's expression shuddered. "He has expectations. High ones. Just be polite. Let me do most of the talking around him, and we'll be fine." They stopped at a boutique in Manhattan's Diamond District, where a personal stylist was waiting. Siwoo handed Janelle a credit card. "Get whatever you need for the weekend. Rehearsal dinner requires cocktail attire. Wedding is formal. Plus anything else. Shoes, accessories, whatever." Janelle stared at the black card in her hand. "I can't. This is too much. Consider it part of the payment. You need to look the part." His eyes softened slightly. "I know this is strange. I know I'm asking a lot. But I keep my word, Janelle. Do this weekend for me and you'll walk away with your money and never have to see me again. Why did that thought suddenly feel less appealing than it should? The stylist, an elegant Korean woman named Mrs. Park, looked Janelle up and down with an assessing eye that reminded her uncomfortably of Siwoo's initial evaluation, but instead of judgment, the woman's face lit up with professional enthusiasm. Oh, she's gorgeous. Those cheekbones, that skin. Mrs. Park circled Janelle like a sculptor examining marble. We'll make her absolutely stunning. Mr. Kang, you can wait outside. 2 hours later, Janelle barely recognized herself in the mirror. The cocktail dress for the rehearsal dinner was a deep emerald that made her brown skin glow, fitted perfectly to her tall frame. The wedding outfit was even more spectacular, a floor-length gown in midnight blue with delicate beading that caught the light. Mrs. Park had added jewelry, shoes, even a small clutch purse. You look like you belong in his world now, Mrs. Park said quietly, adjusting the fall of the dress. But remember, you always belonged in any world you chose to enter. The clothes just make it easier for others to see. The words hit Janelle harder than expected. She'd spent so much of her life feeling like she was on the outside looking in, pressing her nose against the glass of opportunities that seemed reserved for other people. People with money, with connections, with the right skin color, or the right background. When she emerged from the dressing room in the emerald cocktail dress, Siwoo stood from where he'd been working on his phone. For a moment, just a heartbeat, his carefully controlled expression cracked, and she saw something raw flash across his face. You look beautiful, he said, his voice rougher than before. Perfect. The way he looked at her made Janelle's breath catch. This was pretend, she reminded herself. He was paying her to play a role. That heat in his eyes was probably just appreciation for a job well done, for a prop that would photograph well, but it didn't feel pretend when his hand settled on the small of her back as they left the boutique, warm and possessive through the thin fabric of her dress. It didn't feel pretend when they stopped for lunch at a quiet Korean restaurant, and he ordered for her in fluid Korean before translating the menu, his eyes dancing with amusement when she admitted she'd never tried half the dishes. You're about to discover that Korean food is life-changing, he said, and when the first plates arrived, he was right. The flavors were intense, complex, unlike anything she'd experienced. Siwoo watched her reactions with undisguised pleasure, occasionally reaching across to place the best bites on her plate. Tell me something real about you, he said suddenly, surprising her. Something not in the script. Janelle hesitated. Why? Because I'm spending the weekend with you. I'd like to know who you actually are, not just who you're pretending to be. Fair enough. I wanted to be a writer, she admitted. Went to community college for 2 years, studied English literature. Had to drop out when my mum got sick. Needed to work full-time to help with medical bills, never went back. Something shifted in Siwoo's expression. You could still go back. It's not too late. With what money? What time? I work 70 hours a week just to make rent. The words came out more bitter than she intended. Sorry, you asked. Don't apologize. His hand covered hers on the table, and the contact sent electricity up her arm. You're remarkable, Janelle. Working that hard, surviving on your own. That takes more strength than most people have. She pulled her hand away, uncomfortable with the intensity of his gaze. It's not strength. It's just what you do when you don't have choices. There are always choices. Most people just don't have the courage to make the hard ones. He leaned back, creating distance again. My family built their empire through hard choices. Sometimes I wonder if we made the right ones. There was something haunting in his voice, a glimpse of the man beneath the Mafia prince exterior. Before Janelle could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it and stood. We need to go. The rehearsal dinner starts in 3 hours. Time to meet the family. As they drove toward the venue, a historic estate in Westchester County, Janelle's nervousness returned full force. Siwoo must have sensed it, because his hand found hers in the space between them, fingers intertwining. Just follow my lead, he said quietly. And remember, for this weekend you're mine. Act like it. His words sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with fear. The estate was breathtaking, all manicured gardens and elegant architecture. Expensive cars lined the circular driveway. As they approached the entrance, Siwoo's entire demeanor shifted. The man who'd been almost warm at lunch disappeared, replaced by someone cold and commanding. His hand on her back was no longer gentle, it was claiming. When they entered the reception area where family members mingled, every eye turned to them. To him, radiating power and danger, and to her, the tall black woman in the emerald dress at his side. Si-woo! A beautiful young woman in a white dress rushed toward them, clearly the bride, Ji-won. You actually brought someone. I can't believe it. Ji-won, this is Janelle. Janelle, my sister. Si-woo's voice warmed slightly. Try not to interrogate her too aggressively. Ji-won was already pulling Janelle into an enthusiastic hug. Oh my God, you're gorgeous, and you're dating my impossible brother. Tell me everything. How did he trick you into this relationship? Before Janelle could answer, an older Korean woman approached, her elegant hanbok and pearl necklace screaming old money. Her eyes swept over Janelle with the precision of a sniper assessing a target. So, she said in heavily accented English, this is the girl. Si-woo's hand tightened on Janelle's back. Mother, this is Janelle. Janelle, my mother, Mrs. Kang. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. This weekend, Janelle realized with creeping dread, was going to be much more complicated than she'd imagined. Mrs. Kang's smile was gracious, but her eyes were calculating. How lovely to meet you, Janelle, she said, each word precisely enunciated. Si-woo has told us so little about you. Come, sit. Tell me everything. It wasn't a request. Janelle found herself ushered to a private seating area, Si-woo's mother on one side, Ji-won on the other, while Si-woo was pulled away by his father and several other men in expensive suits. He glanced back at her with something that might have been concern before disappearing into the crowd. So, Mrs. Kang began, her English flawless despite the accent. You're a graduate student? Yes, ma'am. Columbia. Literature. The lie came easier than expected. Literature. How artistic. The word wasn't quite a compliment. And your family? Just my mother and younger sister. We're from Harlem. Janelle decided to stay as close to the truth as possible. My mother works in healthcare. My sister is finishing high school. I see. Mrs. Kang's expression was unreadable. And how did you meet my son? Janelle launched into their rehearsed story, acutely aware of Mrs. Kang's scrutiny. Ji-won at least seemed genuinely delighted, interrupting with questions about their first date and whether Si-woo was as bossy with you as he is with everyone else. He's protective, Janelle said carefully, but respectful. That's code for bossy, Ji-won laughed. My brother doesn't know how to not be in control. You must be special if he's actually letting someone into his life. Mrs. Kang's sharp gaze never wavered. You're very beautiful, Janelle. But beauty fades. What else do you bring to a relationship with my son? The question was borderline insulting, but Janelle kept her expression neutral. She dealt with this kind of subtle racism and classism her entire life. The assumption that she had nothing to offer beyond her appearance, that she was somehow less worthy. I bring myself, Mrs. Kang, my intelligence, my values, my strength. If that's not enough, then perhaps Si-woo and I aren't as compatible as we thought. She met the older woman's eyes directly. Though he seems to think I'm worth his time. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Mrs. Kang's lips curved into something that might have been approval. You have spine. Good. Si-woo needs someone who won't bend every time he gives an order. She stood, smoothing her hanbok. We'll speak more later. As she glided away, Ji-won let out a low whistle. Holy shit, you just passed the test. She usually eats my brother's girlfriends alive. Well, not that he's had many actual girlfriends, mostly just... She cut herself off, looking embarrassed. Just what? Janelle asked, though she could guess. Let's just say Si-woo doesn't do relationships. He does arrangements. I honestly thought you'd be another one. Ji-won's eyes were kind, but the way he looks at you is different, like you matter. Guilt twisted in Janelle's stomach. This was exactly an arrangement, just not the kind Ji-won was imagining. Before she could respond, a strong hand settled on her shoulder. Can I steal her back? Si-woo's voice was warm with possessiveness that made several nearby women glance over with open envy. Ji-won grinned. She's all yours. But treat her right, or I'll tell Mom you're being a terrible boyfriend. Saiwu guided Janelle away from his sister, his hand sliding to her waist in a gesture that looked effortlessly natural. Up close, she could see the tension in his jaw, the tightness around his eyes. "My father wants to meet you," he said quietly. "Just smile, be polite, and for God's sake don't mention anything about literature or graduate school. He'll ask questions you can't answer. Stick to vague statements." "Si Wu, what exactly does your family do?" The question had been burning in her mind all day. "I know you said import-export, but not here." His grip tightened slightly. "Later. I promise I'll explain everything. But right now, I need you to trust me." Trust him. The man who'd hired her for the weekend. The man whose last name apparently inspired fear even among other wealthy criminals. The man whose touch made her forget this was supposed to be pretend. Before she could respond, they entered a study where several older Korean men stood around a desk, drinks in hand. The conversation stopped immediately. The man behind the desk, Saiwoo's father, looked up with eyes identical to his son's, dark, intense, calculating. "So," he said in perfect unaccented English, "the girlfriend." Mr. Kang was shorter than his son, but twice as intimidating. Everything about him screamed power, from his tailored suit to the way the other men in the room instinctively deferred to him. He studied Janelle with the same assessing gaze as his wife, but colder, more clinical. "Janelle, this is my father." Saiwoo's voice was carefully neutral. "Father, Janelle." "Sir, it's an honor to meet you." Janelle extended her hand, proud that it didn't shake. Mr. Kang looked at her hand for a long moment before shaking it once firmly. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. A hint of amusement flickered across his stern features. "Someone less substantial. My son typically chooses companions who are decorative but forgettable. You, I suspect, are neither." It might have been a compliment. It might have been a threat. With this family, it was impossible to tell. "Thank you, sir, I think. You're welcome at my daughter's wedding. But understand this." He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping. "My son is important to this family, to our business. If you're here to distract him, to weaken him, to cause problems, you will regret it. Am I clear?" Ice flooded Janelle's veins. This wasn't the generic warning of an overprotective father. This was a genuine threat from a dangerous man. Saiwu stepped forward, his hand moving to the small of Janelle's back. "Father, that's enough." "Is it?" Mr. Kang's eyes flicked between them, and something shifted in his expression. "Interesting. Very interesting." Before anyone could elaborate, a bell chimed, signaling the start of the rehearsal dinner. Mr. Kang dismissed them with a wave, but Janelle felt his gaze burning into her back as they left. "I'm sorry about that," Siwoo murmured, as they joined the other guests moving toward the dining room. "My father is cautious about anyone entering the family." "Is he always that terrifying?" "Only when he likes someone." Siwoo's lips quirked. "If he didn't approve of you, we'd already be leaving." The dinner was a spectacle of wealth and tradition. Long tables decorated with elaborate floral arrangements, each place setting worth more than Janelle made in a month. She was seated beside Saiwoo, who kept a proprietary hand on her knee throughout the meal, occasionally leaning over to explain dishes or translate conversations. His proximity was intoxicating. The heat of his body, the subtle scent of his cologne, the way his fingers traced absent patterns on her leg that made it impossible to focus on the food. Several times she caught him watching her with an intensity that had nothing to do with their fake relationship. "You're doing perfectly," he murmured during a lull in conversation, his lips close to her ear. "My mother has mentioned 3 times how much she likes you. That's practically gushing by her standards. What about your father? If he didn't like you, you'd know." His hand squeezed her knee gently. "Trust me on that." As dinner progressed, Janelle observed the family dynamics with growing fascination. The careful hierarchies, the way conversations shifted when Mr. Kang spoke, the undercurrent of business discussions disguised as small talk. This wasn't just a wealthy family. This was an empire, with all the complexity and danger that implied. She also noticed the way other women watched Siwoo, Several made attempts to engage him in conversation, their body language openly flirtatious despite Janelle's presence. He was polite but distant, never removing his hand from Janelle's leg, never giving them more than cursory attention. "Do you always have this many admirers?" she asked, half-joking. His eyes darkened. "They don't matter, for this weekend you're the only woman I see." The way he said it made her pulse skip. This was acting, she reminded herself. He was just really, really good at playing the role. But then why did it feel so real? After dinner, guests mingled in the garden under strings of fairy lights. G1 had put together a slideshow of childhood photos that played on a large screen, and Janelle found herself genuinely charmed by images of a serious-faced little Saiwoo standing protectively beside his baby sister. "You were adorable," she said, nudging him gently. "What happened?" "Life happened." But there was warmth in his voice as he watched his sister laughing with her fiancé. "She deserves this. Deserves happiness. Someone who sees her for who she is, not what family she comes from." There was something wistful in his tone, almost envious. Janelle wondered if Saiwoo had ever had that. Someone who saw him beyond his name, his power, his dangerous connections. "Sir, there you are." A young Korean man in an expensive suit approached, his expression urgent. "We have a situation. The shipment from—" He cut off abruptly, noticing Janelle. Siwoo's entire demeanor changed. The warmth vanished, replaced by cold authority. "Not now, Taemin. But sir, it can't wait. I said, not now." The command in Siwoo's voice made the younger man physically step back. "We'll discuss this later." Taemin glanced nervously at Janelle before nodding and disappearing back into the crowd. The moment he was gone, Saiwoo's expression softened again, but the warmth didn't quite return to his eyes. "I need to make a call," he said quietly. "Will you be all right here for a few minutes?" "Of course. I'll—" Janelle gestured vaguely toward the other guests. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that made her breath catch. "Don't wander too far, and if anyone makes you uncomfortable, come find me immediately." Then he was gone, disappearing toward the house with his phone already at his ear. Janelle stood alone in the garden, still feeling the ghost of his lips on her skin, trying to remember that none of this was real. "So," a male voice said behind her, smooth and cold, "you're Saiwoo's latest acquisition." Janelle turned to find a tall Korean man in his 40s watching her, a champagne glass in hand and cruelty in his smile. Everything about him set off alarm bells. "I'm his girlfriend," she said evenly. "Is that what he's calling it now?" The man stepped closer and Janelle instinctively backed up. "I'm Jin Park, business associate of the family. Tell me, how much is he paying you?" Her blood ran cold. "Excuse me." "Oh, don't play innocent. Siwoo doesn't do relationships. He does transactions, so what's your price, 5,000, 10? Or are you hoping to leverage this into something more permanent?" His eyes traveled over her body in a way that made her skin crawl. "You're beautiful. I'll give him that. But a bit obvious for his usual taste." The racism in the comment was thinly veiled. Janelle's hands clenched into fists. She'd dealt with men like this her whole life, men who saw black women as either invisible or hypersexual, who couldn't conceive of them as simply human. "I think you should leave," she said coldly. "Or what? You'll tell Saiwoo?" Jin laughed. "Sweetheart, we've been friends since childhood. He'll choose me over a paid companion any day." "Choose you for what?" Saiwoo's voice cut through the garden like a blade. He appeared beside Janelle so quickly she almost jumped, his entire body radiating controlled fury. Jin's smug expression faltered. "Siwoo, I was just leaving." Siwoo's voice was ice. "Before I forget, we're at my sister's wedding and do something we'll both regret." The threat hung in the air like smoke. Jin's face went pale. He muttered something in Korean and retreated quickly, nearly stumbling in his haste. The moment he was gone, Saiwoo turned to Janelle, his expression fierce. "Did he touch you?" "No, he just—" Her voice shook slightly. "He implied that you were paying me to be here." Siwoo's jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. "That bastard! I should have—" He caught himself, taking a deep breath. "I'm sorry." Jin has always been an asshole, but that was unacceptable. It's fine. I'm used to— Don't. His hands came up to cup her face, the touch gentle despite the fury still simmering in his eyes. Don't say you're used to being disrespected. You deserve better than that. They were standing too close. His thumbs traced her cheekbones, his gaze locked on hers with an intensity that made the rest of the garden fade away. This was supposed to be fake, a performance, but there was nothing fake about the way her heart hammered against her ribs, the way heat pooled in her stomach, the way every nerve in her body seemed attuned to his presence. "Saiwoo," she whispered, not sure what she was asking for. His eyes dropped to her lips. For a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her, really kiss her, not the chaste performance they'd discussed. The air between them crackled with tension so thick she could barely breathe. Then his phone buzzed. The moment shattered. Siwoo stepped back, his professional mask sliding into place as he checked the message. Whatever he read made his expression darken further. "We need to go," he said abruptly. "Now." "What? Why?" "There's been a complication. Business matter. We need to return to the city tonight." He was already guiding her toward the house, his hand firm on her back. "Get your things. 5 minutes." The ride back to Manhattan was tense and silent. Siwoo spent the entire drive on his phone, speaking rapid Korean in a tone that made even the driver look nervous. Janelle sat in the back seat, her mind spinning with questions she didn't dare ask. When they pulled up to a high-rise building in Tribeca, not her Harlem apartment, Siwoo finally looked at her. "You're staying here tonight," he said. "It's not safe for you to go home right now." "What? Siwoo, you can't just—" "Please." The word stopped her cold. Siwoo didn't strike her as someone who said please often. "I'll explain everything. But right now, I need to know you're somewhere secure. Just for tonight. Against every survival instinct." Janelle nodded. The penthouse apartment was stunning, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furnishing. Siwoo led her to a guest room, then paused in the doorway. "I never should have involved you in this," he said quietly. "I thought it would be simple. A weekend, nothing more. But things are complicated and you deserve to know the truth." "What truth?" "That I'm not just Korean Mafia, Janelle. I'm the heir, and someone just tried to kill me tonight." Janelle's knees went weak. "What?" The word came out barely above a whisper. "Someone tried to— That's why Taemin interrupted dinner. There was an attempt on my life earlier today. Car bomb meant to go off when I started the engine this morning. Except I had you picked up first, so the timing was off." Siwoo's face was carved from stone. "If I'd been alone, following my usual schedule, I'd be dead." The room tilted. Janelle grabbed the doorframe for support. "Oh my God." "You're safe," he said quickly, stepping closer. "You were never the target, but I can't risk someone using you to get to me. Not until I've dealt with this." "Dealt with this?" "Siwoo, someone tried to blow you up. Shouldn't you be calling the police?" She cut off at his expression. "Right, because you're the Mafia. The police aren't exactly an option. I have people handling it. But you need to stay here tonight where I know you're protected. Tomorrow we'll finish the wedding as planned. Then this arrangement ends. You get your money, you walk away, and you never have to think about me or my world again." He said it like it was that simple. Like she could just forget this weekend. Forget him. Forget the way he'd looked at her in the garden like she was the only person in the world who mattered. "Who's trying to kill you?" she asked. "I don't know yet. Could be a rival organization. Could be someone inside my own family. In this business, enemies come from every direction." His voice was bitter. "This is why I don't do relationships, Janelle. Everyone close to me becomes a target." The confession hung between them. Janelle understood suddenly why a man as powerful as Siwoo would hire a stranger for a weekend, not just to appease his family, but because genuine connection meant genuine vulnerability. "Is that really the only reason you hired me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Because I was safe? A stranger who couldn't be used against you?" Siwoo's eyes met hers, and in them she saw something raw and wounded. "At first, yes. But then I watched you handle my mother's interrogation without flinching. Watched you call my father Sir, while looking him straight in the eye like you had every right to be there. Watched you defend yourself against Jin's racism with such grace, I wanted to put my fist through his face." He stepped closer. his voice dropping. You were supposed to be a prop, a convenient solution. Instead, you're the most real thing I've encountered in years. Janelle's breath caught. This couldn't be happening. He was her employer. This was a transaction. She couldn't actually be developing feelings for a Korean mafia boss she'd known for barely 36 hours. Except she was. Si-woo. Don't. He held up a hand. Don't say anything. We have one more day of this arrangement. Let's just finish what we started. Tomorrow you'll be free. Free of me, free of this dangerous world. That's what you deserve. He turned to leave, but Janelle's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. The contact sent electricity through her arm. What if I don't want to be free of you? The words hung in the air between them, charged and terrifying. Si-woo stared at her hand on his wrist, then slowly, so slowly, his fingers wrapped around hers. You don't know what you're saying, he said hoarsely. You don't know what being with me really means. Then tell me. No more evasions, no more half-truths. Tell me who you really are. For a moment she thought he'd pull away, retreat back into that cold armor. Then his shoulders sagged slightly, and he pulled her into the apartment's living room, sitting on the leather sofa and gesturing for her to join him. My family runs one of the largest Korean organized crime syndicates on the East Coast, he began, his voice flat. Import-export is real. We do move legitimate goods, but we also control gambling, protection services, and strategic business acquisitions. My father built this empire from nothing when he immigrated 40 years ago. Now we have ties to organizations in Korea, connections with the Yakuza, agreements with the Italian families. He ran a hand through his hair, mussing it. I was groomed for this from childhood, trained to lead, to make hard decisions, to never show weakness. When I was 16, my father took me to my first collection, a business owner who'd borrowed money and couldn't pay. He wanted me to learn how we maintain respect. Janelle stayed silent, sensing he needed to get this out. I watched my father break that man's hand, Si-woo continued, his voice empty of emotion, methodically, calmly. Then he handed me the hammer and told me to break the other one, to show I was strong enough to lead. Did you? Janelle whispered. No, I refused. In front of all his men, I refused. My father beat me unconscious that night. Si-woo's laugh was hollow. But he also never questioned my authority again. Turned out there are more effective ways to maintain control than violence. I learned to use fear, leverage, intelligence. I'm better at this than he ever was, and it kills him. That's why he warned me about weakening you, Janelle realized. He thinks emotions make you vulnerable. They do. In this world, caring about someone gives your enemies a weapon. He finally looked at her, and the anguish in his eyes made her chest ache. That's why when I saw you standing in that VIP room, I knew you were perfect, beautiful, smart, strong, but ultimately temporary. Someone I could want without ever actually having. Except it's not temporary anymore, Janelle said softly. Is it? No. The admission seemed torn from him. You were supposed to be easy to walk away from. Instead, every moment with you makes it harder to remember why I have to. Without thinking, Janelle reached out and cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Then don't walk away. Janelle, someone tried to kill me today. Tomorrow it might be a sniper, the next day poison. Everyone I care about becomes a target. My mother lives with bodyguards. My sister had to sign a prenuptial agreement that includes security protocols. Is that what you want? To spend your life looking over your shoulder? I already spend my life looking over my shoulder, she shot back. I'm a black woman in America, working 3 jobs to survive. You think I don't face danger? Don't face threats? Don't have to constantly be aware of my surroundings, my words, my mere existence, because the world has decided people who look like me are expendable. Si-woo's eyes widened slightly. She pressed on. Your father threatened me tonight because he thinks I'm not good enough for you. Jin made racist comments because he assumes I'm only here for money. Your mother interrogated me like I was a suspect in a crime. And you know what? I've dealt with that my entire life. So don't tell me your world is too dangerous for me. I survived getting here. I can survive anything. For a long moment, Si-woo just stared at her. Then, without warning, he pulled her against him and kissed her. It wasn't like the chaste kiss they'd discussed for show. This was hungry, desperate, real. His hands tangled in her hair, her arms wrapped around his neck, and for a perfect moment, nothing existed except the two of them and this impossible, irrational connection that had formed in barely 2 days. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sai-Wu pressed his forehead to hers. "This is insane," he murmured. "Completely," she agreed. "I'm still paying you. I'm still taking the money." He laughed, and the sound was genuine, unguarded. "God, you're incredible." They stayed like that, wrapped together on the sofa, as Sai-Wu made quiet phone calls in Korean, and Janelle dozed against his chest. At some point he carried her to the guest bedroom, but instead of leaving, he lay down beside her, fully clothed, his arms protectively around her. "Tomorrow we finish the wedding," he said into the darkness. "Then we figure out what the hell we're doing." "Okay," Janelle whispered. "And Janelle." "Yeah? Thank you for being brave enough to want this, to want me." She turned in his arms and kissed him again, softer this time. "Thank you for giving me a reason to be brave." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, while outside the penthouse windows, New York City glittered with 1,000 dangerous possibilities. Neither of them knew that tomorrow would test their newfound connection in ways they couldn't imagine. The wedding was beautiful. Ji-won looked radiant in her traditional hanbok before changing into a modern white gown for the ceremony. The venue, a historic mansion in Westchester, was decorated with thousands of white flowers. Guests filled every seat, a mix of elegant Korean families and clearly connected business associates. Janelle sat in the third row beside Mrs. Kang, who'd insisted on the placement. "You're practically family now," she'd said with a knowing smile that made Janelle wonder how much the woman actually suspected. Si-Woo stood at the altar as his sister's escort, devastatingly handsome in a tailored black suit. Their eyes met across the room, and the heat in his gaze made her pulse skip. Last night had changed everything. They hadn't discussed details, hadn't made promises, but the shift between them was undeniable. They'd woken wrapped around each other, and Si-Woo had kissed her slowly, thoroughly, before reluctantly pulling away to prepare for the day. His security team had swept the venue twice, and armed men in expensive suits were discreetly stationed throughout the property. The ceremony was lovely, a blend of traditional Korean customs and modern vows. Ji-won cried. Her fiancé looked at her like she hung the moon. Even Mr. Kang's stern expression softened as he walked his daughter down the aisle. Janelle found herself unexpectedly moved. This family, commitment, love, felt genuine in a way she hadn't expected from a Mafia dynasty. These weren't just criminals. They were people with relationships, traditions, moments of authentic connection. During the reception, Si-Woo claimed her immediately for the first dance. His hand settled possessively on her waist as they swayed to the music, his body pressed against hers in a way that was definitely not appropriate for a family event. "You look stunning," he murmured against her ear, his breath warm on her skin. The midnight blue gown from the boutique fit perfectly, and she'd worn her hair natural, coils free and wild. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she said, running her hand along his shoulder, "though I preferred you in the shirt with the buttons undone." His eyes darkened. "Later, after the wedding, we're going to talk about that comment and exactly what it means." The promise in his voice made heat pool low in her stomach. Around them other couples danced, but Janelle only saw Si-Woo, the intensity of his gaze, the possessive way he held her, the slight smile playing at his lips. "Your family is watching," she noted. "Let them watch." He spun her slightly, pulling her even closer. "Let everyone see exactly whose you are." "Whose I am?" She raised an eyebrow. "Pretty presumptuous." "Is it?" His lips brushed her temple. "Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me last night didn't mean anything. Tell me you can walk away at the end of this weekend and never think of me again." She couldn't. God help her. She couldn't. "You're impossible," she whispered. "You love it." He was right. Against all logic, all survival instinct, she was falling for this dangerous, complicated, impossible man. The moment shattered when Taemin appeared at Si-Woo's elbow, his expression urgent. "Sir, we have a problem." Now, Saiwu's entire body tensed. What problem? Not here. Taemin's eyes flicked to Janelle and away. Private. Siwoo's jaw clenched. Find Jae-sung. Tell him to stay with Janelle. Don't let her out of your sight. Fear spiked through her. Siwoo. It's fine, he said, but his expression said otherwise. Just a precaution. Stay with Jae-sung. I'll be back in 10 minutes. He kissed her forehead, quick, reassuring, and disappeared with Taemin. A moment later, a tall Korean man in his 30s approached, his earpiece and alert eyes marking him as security. Miss Janelle, I'm Jae-sung. I'll be staying close until Mr. Kang returns. Is something wrong? Just protocol, miss. Except it wasn't just protocol. Janelle could see other security personnel mobilizing around the perimeter, could feel the subtle shift in energy as several of Mr. Kang's men moved into defensive positions. Something was very wrong. The answer came 30 minutes later, when Siwoo strode back into the reception hall, his expression murderous. He went straight to his father, and the two men had a heated conversation in Korean that drew alarmed looks from nearby guests. Then Siwoo was at Janelle's side, taking her arm with barely controlled urgency. We're leaving. What? Why? No questions. Please, just trust me. His tone brooked no argument. Janelle let him guide her through the crowd, Jae-sung and several other security men forming a protective circle around them. They were almost to the exit when a commotion erupted from the main entrance. Raised voices, shouting in Korean. Then, a gunshot. The reception hall exploded into chaos. Guests screamed and dove for cover. Security drew weapons. Saiwoo shoved Janelle behind him, his body a shield between her and the threat, and in that moment Janelle saw exactly who he really was, a man who'd been trained for violence since childhood, who moved with lethal precision, who would kill without hesitation to protect what was his. Get her to the safe room, Siwoo shouted to Jae-sung. Now. Sir, you should... I said now. Jae-sung grabbed Janelle's arm and pulled her toward a side exit. She resisted, trying to see what was happening, trying to see Saiwoo. 3 men had entered the hall, armed, dangerous, clearly not wedding guests. Siwoo and his father's security team formed a barrier between them and the fleeing guests. Then she saw one of the gunmen raise his weapon, aiming directly at Saiwoo's back. No! Janelle screamed. Everything happened at once. She broke free from Jae-sung and ran towards Saiwoo. One of the gunmen saw her and shifted his aim. Saiwoo turned, saw her running, and his face went white with terror. The gun went off. Siwoo moved with impossible speed, crossing the distance between them and tackling her to the ground as bullets tore through the space where she'd been standing. They hit the marble floor hard, Saiwoo's body covering hers completely, his arms wrapped around her head protectively. More gunshots, shouting, the sounds of a fight, then silence. Saiwoo's entire body was shaking against hers. When he finally pulled back enough to look at her, his eyes were wild with fear and fury. Are you hurt? He demanded, his hands running over her frantically, checking for injuries. Are you shot? Janelle, answer me. I'm fine, she gasped. I'm okay. Are you... He kissed her, hard, desperate, claiming. When he pulled back, his expression was raw. Don't ever do that again, he said hoarsely. Don't ever risk yourself for me. Do you understand? Never. You were about to be shot. I don't care. His shout echoed through the now silent hall. You think I give a damn what happens to me if you're dead? You think any of this matters without you? The confession hung between them, devastating in its honesty. Around them, security was restraining the gunman. Guests were being escorted to safety. Ji-won was crying in her new husband's arms. But all Janelle could see was Saiwoo's face, the love and terror warring in his expression. You saved my life, she whispered. You saved mine first. He helped her to her feet, his hands never leaving her body. That's twice now. You're making this very difficult to walk away from. Then don't. Janelle, I love you. The words came out steady, certain. I know it's insane. I know we've only known each other 2 days. But I love you, Saiwoo, and I'm not going anywhere. For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I love you too," he said against her hair. "God help us both, but I love you too." Around them, his family was dealing with the aftermath of the attack. Later, Janelle would learn that the gunmen were from a rival organization trying to take advantage of the family gathering. Later, she'd discover that Saiwoo's quick thinking had prevented any casualties. Later, there would be questions and explanations and complicated discussions about what came next. But in that moment, standing in the middle of a crime scene in a ruined wedding venue, Janelle felt safer than she'd ever felt in her life, because she was his, and he was hers, and everything else was just details they'd figure out together. Years passed, each season marking new chapters in their impossible love story. The penthouse had become home, decorated with pieces of both their worlds, African art beside Korean ceramics, soul food cookbooks next to kimchi recipes. Janelle's books lined the shelves, evidence of the degree she'd finally completed with Saiwoo's support and encouragement. Her first novel sat on the coffee table, a bestseller that told the story of a waitress who fell in love with a dangerous man and found herself instead. "Mom, Dad, hurry up or we'll be late." Their daughter's voice carried from the hallway, impatient and bossy in the way that made both parents laugh. 5-year-old Jimin, named after Saiwoo's sister, was already dressed in her flower girl outfit, her dark curls, so like Janelle's, bouncing as she hopped from foot to foot. "We have plenty of time, baby," Janelle called back, fastening her earrings. The mirror reflected a woman transformed, not in her features, but in her bearing. She carried herself with confidence now, comfortable in the space between her past and her present. Siwoo appeared in the doorway, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, his eyes softening as they landed on her. Even after all this time, the way he looked at her made her breath catch. "You're stunning," he murmured, crossing to wrap his arms around her waist from behind. "Though I preferred you in the emerald dress from our first night. That was a lifetime ago. Best investment I ever made." He kissed her temple. $5,000 for forever, not a bad deal. Janelle laughed and turned in his arms. The life they'd built together was complicated, sometimes dangerous, always intense. Siwoo had gradually transitioned the family business toward more legitimate enterprises, using his intelligence and strategy to build an empire that didn't require violence. He still had enemies. They still had security, but they also had love, partnership, a family. "Ready?" he asked. "Always." They collected Jimin and headed to the wedding. Another family celebration, this time for Taimin, Siwoo's right-hand man who'd become like a brother. As they entered the venue, Janelle thought about that first wedding, the gunshots, the moment everything changed. "What are you thinking?" Siwoo asked, his hand warm on the small of her back in that possessive gesture she'd come to love. "That I was terrified of you at first," she admitted. "Terrified of your world, your power, everything you represented. And now I can't imagine being anywhere else." She stood on her toes to kiss him softly. "You once said I was the most real thing you'd encountered in years. You're the most real thing that ever happened to me." Siwoo pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers in their private moment amid the crowd. "You saved me, Janelle. In every way a person can be saved. We saved each other." Jimin tugged on Siwoo's jacket. "Daddy, is it time for me to throw flowers?" He scooped her up, settling her on his hip with the ease of practice. "Almost, little one. Are you ready?" "I'm always ready." She threw her arms wide dramatically. "I'm the best flower girl ever." Janelle watched her daughter and her husband with a fullness in her chest that still sometimes took her breath away. This life, messy, complicated, dangerous, beautiful, was theirs. Built on a foundation of a weekend arrangement that became something neither of them expected. As the ceremony began, and Jimin marched down the aisle with exaggerated importance, scattering petals like a tiny empress, Janelle felt Saiwoo's hand find hers, his fingers intertwined with hers, steady and strong, a promise renewed with every touch. They'd started with a transaction, a simple exchange of money for time, pretense for payment. But somewhere in those 2 days, between family interrogations and cultural bridges between danger and devotion, they'd found something infinitely more valuable. They'd found each other, And in finding each other, they'd discovered that sometimes the best love stories begin with the most impossible circumstances, because those are the ones worth fighting for, worth risking everything for, worth building a forever on. The wedding ended. Celebrations continued. Years would pass with their own challenges and joys, but through it all one truth remained constant. She was his. He was hers, and that was worth more than any amount of money could ever buy.